This video demonstrates the standard operating procedure for the pipes, pumps, and valves apparatus in the Unit Operations Laboratory at Lafayette College. Before operating the apparatus, it is important to be aware of the necessary safety precautions. When working in the lab, standard personal protective equipment should be worn at all times, which include safety glasses, long pants, closed-toed shoes, and hard hats. Long hair should also be tied back. During operation, do not allow the pump to run dry by making sure that V2 is always open and there is a sufficient amount of water in the feed tank. When starting up the pump, ensure that V150 is slightly open to prevent damage to the pump. Be aware of the location of electrical outlets. In the case of a spill, be sure to clean up the area in an appropriate and safe manner. Rubber mats are present to prevent injury due to potential slipping hazards. In order to start up the pump experiment, open V148 to fill the feed supply tank with approximately 20 gallons of water. Make sure V150 is partially open to allow water to flow through the flow meter when the pump is started. To calibrate the flow meter, only the venturi section of the pipe will be used. Turn on the pump by pressing the black start switch as well as the power reader by flipping the red switch up. In order to calibrate the flow meter, you must first set the rotometer to its desired flow rate by turning V150. On the flow meter, read the flow rate at the top of the float. To calibrate the flow meter, tear a collection bucket using the scale next to the feed tank. Place the collection bucket near the scale under the exit at V160 and place a waste bucket nearby and place the hose in the waste bucket. Open V160 and close V161 simultaneously. Once the flow reaches steady state, transfer the hose into the collection bucket and simultaneously begin a timer. After collecting water for the desired amount of time, move the hose back into the waste bucket. Immediately close V160 and open V161. Mask the collection bucket, then pour out the contents of both buckets into the feed supply tank. Be sure to record the temperature of the water at several points during the calibration to account for differences in the density of water. To begin, the valves should be in the same positions as those when calibrating the flow meter, with V161 open and V160 closed. Set the flow meter using V150 and allow water to recycle to the feed supply tank. Read and record the pressure readings going into and out of the pump, as well as the horsepower being used by the pump. The pump power will be altered by changing the flow rate of the water. Over the course of this block, the operating ranges for the straight section of pipe, 90-degree elbows, gate valve, globe valve, and venturi meter will be determined. To determine the operating limits of the pressure gauges, V150 must be adjusted until a pressure gauge produces a reading. The minimum flow rate and the pressure values corresponding to a reading on the pressure gauge should be recorded as the minimum operating value. Using V150, slowly increase the flow rate until the pressure reading on the rotometer reaches a maximum to determine the upper limit of the system's operating range. Each section of the pipe rack corresponds to a pressure gauge. The pressure drop across the straight section of pipe is represented by DPI 101. For the elbows, DPI 102. For the gate valve, DPI 103. For the globe valve, DPI 104. And for the venturi meter, DPI 100. Start by ensuring that valves V151, 157, 158, and 159 are open, and that valves V152, 153, 155, 156, and 160 are closed. Next, set the flow rate to the desired value using valve V150. Once the desired flow rate is set, measure the pressure drop corresponding to the particular portion of the pipe that is being tested. If the corresponding pressure meters are not responding, tap them gently to provoke a response. Pressure drop can be determined as a function of the openness of the gate valve and globe valve. To determine the amount of turns that correspond to 100%, close the valves all the way and then count how many turns it takes to open the valve. Use the tabs on the valve to help count the turns. The openness can be adjusted to determine the effect on the pressure drop. To operate the venturi meter, start by opening valves V153 and V156. Next, close valves V151, V152, V155, V159, and V160. Set the flow rate to the desired value by using valve V150. To measure the pressure drop across the Venturi meter, read the pressure on DPI 100. To shut down the system, turn off the centrifugal pump by pressing the stop button on the control panel and turn off the power reader by flipping the switch down. Drain the tank if necessary by opening V154 and replace the plastic cover on the feed supply tank. Drain the water in the pipes by opening V149. If an emergency occurs, shut down the system by pressing the stop button on the pump and contact the laboratory supervisor immediately. To learn more about the equipment in the Unit Operations Laboratory, watch the related videos on the Lafayette CHBE YouTube channel.